Is it going? Okay. Guys, I appreciate each of you being here tonight, and we had a good meeting last week, I think, and then I went home, and the next day I recorded our service. I don't know if y'all noticed that or not, but just decided I would do that. So we appreciate the fact that the way this works is we can always get a service on there, I think, and that's a good thing. But we welcome you to the Lord's house. It's good to be here, and we've had a good day with some of our family, and just it's been a good day and a pretty day, so we're glad for that. A little on the cool side. And again, welcome everybody on Facebook. Glad to see anybody that joins us there, and if you'll comment and share the service tonight so others can see it, and if you have a prayer request, put that on there and we'll get it added as we send out the next call-in post. So I ask you to do that. We want to go to the Lord in prayer and just ask him to bless and to lead and services here, and bless and lead in the service Sunday. We know it's going to be different and maybe a little bit difficult as we start back inside, and some folks outside, and this being our first Sunday back to do that, and then adding to it the communion service, it will be a little bit difficult to organize all that, but we'll get it done. The Lord will help us and bless the service, and so looking forward to doing that, and looking forward to the fact that there'll be several folks probably joining us in the parking lot on using the FM 100 transmitter, and that's perfectly great for people to do that. And with the packaged communion, the packages, that'll make it easy for our deacons to serve everybody and for everybody to participate. So be in prayer for that service and the fact that we're starting back, and the Lord bless that. Did say that if we had opportunities because of good weather, we might take another time outside in October, 1 or 2 times, that sort of thing. So we'll look at that and see as days go by. And if it's a nice warm Sunday morning, we might go outside again. So nothing wrong with trying to do that. If you'll help us pray for those services and help us pray for a revival called Timothy Mark, and Timothy is going to do 5 services, the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th of October. He'll record them from his home, I guess it's in Florida, and put them online. He probably will record in advance and post them, so they'll be there at least by 7 o'clock each of those nights. So be in prayer for him and lift him up. He was glad to hear from us and glad we were doing well, and said he had been too, but had only had, I think, maybe 1 revival service since January. So it pretty much just shut him down, the revival has, as far as that. So anyway, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So he'll do that. And he said he would maybe play some of his music, and as far as that's concerned, he wasn't sure he'd be singing with this, but he might play some of his music, and so that'd be good as far as that. Remember Jenny Tedder, as she continues to recuperate from the hip surgery, and Kendra's mother, Donna, remember her. I hope they both are doing well, and just ask that you pray for them. Remember Chloe and Dollinger and Tommy Jolly, remember them. We had all those that on a prayer list, and I sent a pretty good sized prayer list out to Kendra as we starting back with our bulletins, and probably use that, and instead of doing a newsletter, send out a bulletin to people that are not able to attend by mail or something like that. So just be aware of that, and we appreciate Kendra for doing that. Other prayer requests. I know I've forgotten other folks. That's Daryl's sister Brenda. So remember her in prayer. And today, okay. Remember that little girl. She's been sick for a long time. Seemed to be doing pretty good lately, but they were doing some sort of fundraising for her. I believe fundraiser coming up this weekend. Yeah. So, any others? Unspoken. Remember Beth Ann? She's had a couple of doctor appointments today, and just continue to lift her up in prayer. Remember Bobby's dad, Ed. Stephanie and Lucas. They prepare for their wedding and life together, so be in prayer for them. That young man was supposedly a very fine athlete, a strong young man, and the virus got him, and so he died. He was the first student that in any of the North Carolina system that has died, but passed away. Boone, Appalachian. He was from Thomasville and had been a star high school basketball player, and just any other requests? I know we have several other folks to remember, and so just pray for them and lift them up. Pray for Janet Houck. She's still continuing to get over the diverticulitis bout that she had. Yeah. All right. By the uplifted hand. So, all right, Michael, you want to lead us in prayer? Do appreciate the prayer, and you continue in prayer for those that have been mentioned. The way of announcements, I guess really we do have the revival, and we've mentioned that already, and so be in prayer for that, and we'll try to get some flyers that folks can post around and that sort of thing, and let folks know about that, and it's going to be in the bulletins and that sort of thing, so be aware of that. Brian's working to get these announcements going also, and so be aware of that. And the FM transmitter will be set up outside so that it reaches everybody that needs it outside. So on the what I was talking to Bobby about, and I'm going to talk to the other deacons, but Sunday should be a deacons meeting, and next week a business meeting, but with very little business really to be taken care of. What we may do, and looking ahead to deciding about Thanksgiving and Christmas and services around that and how to handle those, we may wait and have a deacons meeting and a business meeting in November, and make our decisions about how to proceed from there. And so we'll look at that. So just be in prayer about that. I will talk to the other deacons about that and see what we need to do. And don't forget that Sunday is a communion service, and we'll be doing that. And don't forget to pray for that service. And the youth we're starting the youth back next week on Wednesday night, bringing them in, and of course setting them downstairs, social distancing and requiring masks and that sort of thing. So be aware of that. And Felicia will be continuing with the older group as far as that's concerned. So be in prayer for that. Any other announcements? Yeah. Remember Tim. He's having a really rough time right now. So do be in prayer for him and lift him up. If there's no other announcements, we'll go ahead and start looking at our Bible study tonight. Continue with a study on the life of Jesus, and continuing the study that we started last week about the call of the apostles. And so we want to be looking at that. One of you read, and I can't remember which one it was, read the verses in Luke chapter 6 last week, and I'm going to read those again and kind of talk about them just a little bit. Luke chapter 6 starts in verse 12. What we have is a picture of Jesus calling these people, and there's in the story here and in what is here something that kind of I think it speaks to us about what we maybe need to do as we do select leaders, and as we do select churches, select pastors, they select any people that are really maybe elected. But let's read starting in verse 12 and of Luke. Chapter 6 of Luke, verse 12. It says, "And it came to pass in those days that he," and it's talking about Jesus, "went out into a mountain to pray, and continued all night in prayer to God. And when it was day, he called unto him his disciples, and of them he chose 12, whom he named apostles. Simon, whom he also named Peter, Andrew his brother, James and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon called Zelotes, and Judas the brother of James, and Judas Iscariot, which was also the traitor." So we see those verses there telling us several little things about this. First, it lists those who were called. But notice it says that there were more. There was more than this there. His disciples. It says he called to him his disciples. So we don't know what numbers we're talking about there. But out of these people who were there and following him, and that had been part of following him around at this point, that were calling him master, that were being taught, those people, he decided he was going to call 12 and call them apostles. Now, the word disciple kind of means just one who is learning, who sits at the feet of a teacher pretty much. But apostle means one sent forth. So there is that difference, I think, that we need to see about these. But to me, the most interesting thing about this is verse 12. And then it says that Jesus went into a mountain and prayed all night to God. To make this decision, it took a full night of prayer. So to me, what that says is if Jesus, trying to decide who to call of these 12, went into a mountain and prayed all night to make sure that he was communing with God and God was telling him exactly who to call, that if he did that, it's up to us to pray about such things as we, in anything that we do, anything that we select as far as leaders, that we should indeed involve prayer in the process. And I think that for the most part we do. I think sometimes we have people who just sort of naturally step up to do something, and that's fine. I think if we know their character, know who they are, know what their situation is. But I think in just about all situations we need to bathe that decision in prayer, and so that's a big part of it. And it says, and it was day. He came. He called him his disciples. So we don't know how many he has there. We don't know how many people are following him. We have no idea. We know at one point he sends out as many as 70 in pairs to go and do visits. We know that he did that. So we know that those people were available to be used. Was there as many as 70 here today on this day this is going on? Was there more? Was there a larger number than that? There is a point in which the Bible tells that he was teaching and he taught hard things, and that some of the disciples went away from him. They no longer followed him. So how many did he lose there? We don't know those things. The numbers are not given as far as that. So, and then it lists the 12 that were being called apostles, the ones to be sent out. And we know that they were sent out, and they were sent, and they made a difference. The Bible says in the book of Acts that they turned the world upside down. These 12 men, actually 11 of them, Judas, was gone, and they appointed a man named Matthias, but he just kind of disappears. But he's not the only one. There are several of these men that we don't see any more about in the Bible, but local history in many of places records these men coming there and preaching and that sort of thing. So we see that they did continue. We don't know what some of them did as far as that, but Jesus is going up that mountain. That to me is a blessing to know that this was bathed in prayer, and it is an entire night of prayer. That's something as far as that's concerned. I think it's something we need to be aware of. That just a quick prayer sometimes is not what we do. It may take more than just a little bit of prayer, and these disciples were first called Christians in Antioch. Acts 11:26 tells us that. But there was a lot of these disciples. There were a lot of these men and women that followed Jesus and were part of the training with him and seeing his miracles and that sort of thing. So I think that's an important thing. And so why do you think, what reason could there have been for 12? Why 12? Well, that's what most people think, that they were picked because there had been 12 tribes, and but these men, for the most part, they were run out of what we would refer to as Jewry, the Jews, and they preached to the Gentiles, and they started the church really with more Gentiles than they did Jews. So it's a stretch, I think, sometimes to say that it was because of those 12 tribes, and maybe it was. I know that a lot of people believe that, and that is the most accepted thing as to why 12 was picked. Yeah, and 12 is a good number to work with, and it is also a good number. So you got 6 pairs going out. If you send them in pairs, that's a good number going out. So just the 12 tribes, and they're in the book of Revelations. There's 12 gates, and there's 12. It mentions the 12 apostles and all those. It mentions those things, but there's nothing really in writing in the Bible that says why he picked 12. And we know and understand the power of Jesus. Why would he have picked Judas? Unless it was a deliberate thing because he knew what Judas would do. I mean, yeah. Yeah. So you have that situation. Now, I want to talk just a little bit about the 4 books that we're kind of studying when we study the life of Jesus, just briefly, and then we'll go on into the rest of the apostles as far as that. In Matthew, when Matthew talks about Jesus, he's talking about him as if he were a king, as if he were a great, powerful king, lion-like figure, and he as a teacher, and it concentrates much on what his teaching is from sermons. So you see a lot of Jesus's sermons in Matthew as the point of teaching, and so it talks of Jesus as the king, and as far as that, and we find in Matthew a really strong genealogy that ties Jesus all the way back to David, and that's important in the sense that Jesus will someday get the throne of David, and the Bible's very clear that the throne of David will be reestablished with Jesus sitting on it, and he does that as an heir to David, and so it goes to that. The book of Mark portrays Jesus as a servant. He's very different in the book of Mark. And he is there again as a preacher, but he concentrates on the miracles that Jesus does, and there's just list of those miracles. So as far as that, the book of Matthew was written to the Jews. The book of Mark is written to the Romans. And the reason there is no genealogy, nothing about the history of Jesus' family in Mark, is that servants don't have a genealogy. There's no reason for them to have one. The king needs to be connected back to family. The servant doesn't. It's not important as far as that's concerned. So Mark sets him up as a servant. Now Luke, he sets him up as the perfect man. Yes, he's God, but Luke portrays him as the perfect man, and Luke he's more of a historian. He looks at the story of Jesus, and it's like, I went and talked to this person and got the story, and I went to talk to this person. I got the story, and I went to, and he writes a history of Jesus and what he did. He also has a genealogy, just like Matthew, and the reason is that just like Matthew, an important person, a good man, from a family, he would have a genealogy also, and so it portrayed that way. John, he writes him as God, as the mighty God. If you look at the first chapter, John says that Jesus was God, and he writes as a as a theologian. He writes, and that's the reason John is so important to a new person, because he writes the doctrine that we need to know about Jesus. And so that's the reason it's there. And his writing was addressed to anybody that read it. The others were kind of addressed to, Greeks, to the Romans, that sort of thing. But John's is to everybody as far as that. So there is a difference in the way they present Jesus, is what I'm trying to tell you, and something that you need to be aware of as you read that. Any questions on what we've talked about so far? Discussion? Anything you want to say? We finished talking last week about John, and we're going to start tonight with Philip. And Philip is different in that he was not brought to Jesus. Jesus went to him and called him. He's the only one of the 12 apostles that we have a record where Jesus went and said, "Hey, will you come and follow me?" What he did in the sense of he seeks him out. He went to find him and asked him to become a follower. Look at John 1:43, if you will turn there and look at that. And the verse is just before that, John chapter 1. And see that John chapter 1 verse 43. Somebody read that.
The day following, Jesus would go forth into Galilee, finding Philip, and said unto him, Follow me.
Yeah. And then it says Philip was of Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter, so he was from the same place they were. And he found Nathanael and said unto him, We found him of whom Moses in the law and the prophets did write, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. So they make that, but Jesus went to Philip and said, follow me. And it says, he was also the one that in the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus kind of did a test of him. If you look in John chapter 6, back to John chapter 6, verses 5 through 7, and what we see is that Jesus does this little test with Philip. He says, Philip, where can we go buy some bread for these people to eat? And then it says he asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he would do. So, the Bible tells us Jesus knew. And what was Philip's reply? Uh-huh. Yeah. So, in other words, there's no way we could do this, isn't it? He says there's no way this can happen, that we can feed these people. So he looked at the situation and he answered it probably the way most of us would. Hey, this is impossible. It can't be done. There's probably as many as, 10,000 people here when you count husbands, wives, and children. And so how are we going to feed these? And Jesus has asked him that and to test him. And he says, Jesus, there's no way. And so, but then they found the loaves and fishes, and Jesus' miracle, he fed him. And sometimes I think that's an important thing for us to realize, that, practically, we look at things and we don't see any way whatsoever they can be done. But we have to take into account the power of God. If we believe in him and if we call upon him, we have to take that into account. And Philip here kind of didn't do that. So now turn to John chapter 14, verses 6 through 8, and somebody read that. It may be a little longer than that. Let's see. John chapter 14. Starting in verse 6, I guess. Let's see. Somebody read that. Read number 10 too.
Believest thou not that I am in the Father in me? The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works.
So Philip, he basically says, Jesus, you're saying that, you're going to go away. You're going to build this place. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God. I believe also in me. And I'm going to build these mansions, and I'm going to go away, but I'll come back. And Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto me, unto the Father, but by me. If you'd known me, you should have known my Father also. From henceforth you know him and have seen him. And Philip goes, well, we've seen you, but if you will show us the Father, it'll satisfy us. And Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And that's, it's an important lesson that Philip should have already known. He has been taught this. He should already be realizing who Jesus is. And so this is an important thing. This is also important because, so many people say, Jesus was just a man. He never taught that he was the Son of God. That there's nothing where he teaches that he's the Son of God. That's what a lot of people say about the Bible. But here it's very clear. It's very clear who he is, who he says he was, and what he says his relationship to God was. And he was teaching Philip this, Philip who should have known. So any discussion on that? Yeah. Yeah. It is.
We feel like they should be above it because they were with Jesus. But he's with us too.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I say is that, and I've always said this, is that when you read and study the Bible, it doesn't cover the warts, and if it doesn't cover the problems. It tells it just like it is. If I was going to write a really fantastic story about the life of Jesus, I wouldn't include a lot of the stuff. I would go, hey, that they don't need to know that. I'll wipe that one out. But it's there, and you look at the whole Bible, it's that way. As you say, it's just like you and I were doing it, and we had a mistake, or we had a fault, or we asked a silly question, but it's there in the Bible.
I had a note, I don't know if it's my note, me thinking too, but I had a note just talking about Philip being, he kind of wasn't sure, but then I had a note in Acts that he was one of the first ones to call him on the side.
Yeah.
It's like he was one of the first ones to lose his doubt. Is that true? He was one of the first?
Yes, yeah, he was, and like I said, one of the first ones called, and then here he is. He has these doubts, and then, but yes, he's one of the first ones, going out to yeah. So.
But he was actually told by Christ here, face to face, I am the same as God.
Yeah.
The Father and I.
Yeah.
So he was told Jesus had that power.
Now, interesting. The next one we're going to talk about is Bartholomew, and there's not an awful lot about him, and the three Matthew, Mark, and Luke mention him as Bartholomew, but he's not mentioned at all in the book of John. He's not there. He's not mentioned in that list. So, in John's gospel, we find the name Nathaniel instead of Bartholomew. And what most scholars believe is that his name was Nathaniel Bartholomew. Now, what does the word bar mean? Son of. So, this Nathaniel, son of this Ptolemy, or whatever the name is there. Most people think that really was Ptolemy rather than that name there. But Nathaniel, son of, and so it's talking about the same person is what most people believe. The church has always accepted that to be the case, that Nathaniel and Bartholomew is the same person. There's one story about him in the Bible. What is it? Yeah. Yeah. And what happened? Yeah. Hey, what was Nathaniel's opinion when he went to what was Jesus' opinion of Nathaniel? Guile. Yeah. Guile or trickery or deceit. In other words, he said, this guy's he's somebody that's not full of deceit. He's somebody that's not full of trickery. When Philip said to Nathaniel, "Come see a man. I found this man. His name is Jesus. Come and see him." And he's from over there in Nazareth. Come and see him. And Nathaniel says, "There's nothing good can come out of Nazareth." It's like, probably I would say there's nothing good could come out of such and such town, because I got a bad opinion of that place. So that's what in Nathaniel. And then Philip says, okay, come on, let's look, just aside. And when he shows there, he says, here, look, there's a guy here, and say he's a really good guy. He doesn't have any deceit about him. And Nathaniel goes, how do you know anything about me? You've never met me before. And Jesus tells him, I saw you while you were under that fig tree before Philip called you. And so, it's an interesting story. And at that point, Nathanael says, truly, you are the Son of God. Rabbi, you are the Son of God, the King of Israel. So he says immediately, hey, I accept you as this Messiah, as the Messiah. So, like I said, interesting story there. Now, let's talk about Thomas. What do we know about Thomas? Huh? He doubted. That's a big story we count on him, isn't it? Poor man, missed one service, and we call him a doubter for the rest of his time, all time. That's really what happened. You see, after Jesus was seen and came back, was back alive, walking on the earth, the disciples, except for Thomas, were in a room. He didn't come to that service like he was told to do. And Jesus appears to all the 10 disciples that are there, apostles that are there. And then later that week, Thomas joins them, and they say, we saw Jesus Sunday. I won't believe it until I can see the place in his side and the scars in his hands. And Jesus comes back the next Sunday, and Thomas is there, and he says, put your fingers in those scars and those things. That's a unfortunate thing that he gets that story. Was he truly a doubter? Look at John chapter 11, talking about the death of Lazarus. John chapter 11, verse 16. You might read the verse or two in front of that and verse 16. So the last time Jesus was there in where Mary and Martha and Lazarus lived, the Jews tried to kill him. They ran him out of town, basically. He had to leave because the Jews were trying to kill him. So Jesus is, he's been 3 or 4 days before he heard about Lazarus. Now he says he's dead. And he said, let's go back. And so they're all standing there going, but they tried to kill you last week. And Thomas says, let us also go, that we can die with him. Because, you see, he thinks, well, Jesus is going to get killed by these Jews. Let's stand up for him. Let's go with him, and we'll die also. So he's really got some strong faith. He's really got some bravery about him, here. And so that's part of it, isn't it? Yeah, it does. It takes all kinds, and that's a hard story to believe when you think about it. You've seen a man or heard, and everybody knows he was crucified, which is a horrible death, and he was taken and buried in a tomb, and although these people are saying that he's back alive, you haven't seen him. I mean, if you're a practical person, if you're a normal person, you're going to have to just about see that to believe it, aren't you? And that's what Thomas was saying. Until I see, and that's what he, put my hand in his side, I'm not going to believe. What did Jesus do to him? Does he say, I told you I was coming back? You shouldn't have this doubt. Does he say that? No, he just says, go ahead. You said you wanted to put your hands in these scars, and then this said, see this. You just said that. And then what does he say to him after that? Thomas. He says, my Lord and my God. There's no scolding going on from Jesus to Thomas. It's just none at all. Next one we want to talk about is Matthew. He has another name. What is it? Levi. What does he call himself when he writes about himself? He doesn't put his name in the book of Matthew. He does not call himself Matthew. He does not call himself Levi. What does he call himself? He says, and the tax collector. Now let me tell you about tax collectors in those days. What they would do is they would buy from the Romans the right to be the tax collector. They had to pay for this right. And they got to keep, the Romans said, we want this much money collected. And if they could collect more than that, they got to keep that. So they would run over to Bobby's house and they would say, Bobby, you've got a cart here that your donkey pulls, and it's just got one wheel, one set of wheels, one axle. And we're going to charge you 25 pieces of gold for that a year. And then they go over to Michael's house and they say, well, you got a cart, and Michael, and it's got two axles. So we're going to charge you 4 times as much because you got too many. See, I can set as the tax collector whatever I want to charge you. And the money that I take it and I say, Romans, you get this. I get to keep the rest. They were hated by the people. They were literally hated because what they had done is sold out. They're traitors to their own people. They were collecting money that the people didn't have. So that was it was a hard thing. But this is who Matthew, who Levi was, and so these people were, as I said, hated. They were hated, and so look at Matthew 9:9, and then somebody else look at Mark 2:14 and 15. And somebody else look at Luke 27 and 20, Luke 5:27, 29. Luke 5:27, 29. Matthew 9:9. Who's got that?
As Jesus passed forth from thence, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the seat of the custom, and he saith unto him, Follow me. And he rose and followed him.
Okay, Mark 2, verses 14 and 15. Who's got that? Mm-hmm.
As he passed by, he saw Levi the son of Alphaeus sitting at the seat of custom, and said unto him, Follow me. And he arose and followed him. And it came to pass that as Jesus sat at meat in his house, many publicans and sinners sat also together with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many, and they followed him.
Okay, and then Luke 5:27 through 29. Okay, so think about this. There's a office that this man has. It's probably just out on the street somewhere, and he expects people to come and he give them their tax money. If they don't, he goes to them. But he's got this table set up, and he's sitting there, and here comes Jesus just walking by, and he says to him, "Follow me." And immediately Matthew gets up and follows him. Not only does he get up and follow him, he invites him home for a meal, and the other disciples, they go too. So now, why would Jesus pick this man? As hated as he was, Jesus loved him, and I understand that. But when he went the next day to preach, there's that publican standing beside him. And he had to, that man had to really show a change. That man had to really be different. There had to be something, it's a tough thing. And not only that, he goes and invites Jesus to this meal, and then the Pharisees and all these people criticize Jesus for going there and eating with him. Eats with publicans and sinners. You see, you have sinners, these great people who do all these things that are evil, and they're all this, and the publican is also equal with him. That publicans and sinners, they're equal. So Jesus calls this man. Maybe we can see why Jesus had to pray all night to decide who to bring. It's interesting when you think about this man. The other interesting thing is that I think the story is that he says, "Look, people that I've stole from," he said, "I'll give some of the money back." So this man does change, and he is there. But you think that he had to be really open. In his book, he calls himself the tax collector. He had to let people know exactly who he was and how he was changed and how Jesus changed him as far as that. And so did you have Matthew 9 still? Matthew 9, 10 through 13, if you've got it, Michael.
And it came to pass, as Jesus sat at meat at the house, behold, many publicans and sinners came and sat down with him and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto his disciples, Why eateth your master with publicans and sinners? And Jesus heard that he said unto them, They that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. But go ye and learn what that meaneth. I will have mercy and not sacrifice, for I am not come to call to the righteous, but sinners to repentance.
So that was the message Jesus gave about calling this man. I've come to not come to call righteous, but sinners. He recognized exactly what this man was. He knew exactly, publicans and sinners. Yes, this man was a sinner, and he knew that. But he was an undesirable who needed Jesus. He was a sinner who needed Jesus. And when he said the tax collector, he didn't want anybody to forget that Jesus called him in that condition and in that for that reason. Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's right. He was sitting there doing his dirty work, and Jesus said, "Follow me," and there's one more we'll talk about just a little bit, or maybe two more. There's one that's called James, son of Alphaeus, and he's probably of the first 12 the most obscure. We just literally don't know anything about him. Now, what was Matthew's father's name? Alphaeus. Was this man his brother? We don't know. But James, son of Alphaeus, as distinguished from James and John, the son of Zebedee, the sons of thunder, he's called James, son of Alphaeus. And we don't know if it's a different Alphaeus or the same Alphaeus. But, we know that. So they probably aren't brothers, but we don't know that. And that's all we know about him. That's it. There's no other stories about him in the Bible whatsoever. Nothing at all. There's another one. This son of Alphaeus also is called in other places in the Bible James the Lesser. So we don't know if that means he was a little short fella or if there's some other reason. Maybe he was smaller than James and John, but they call him James the Lesser. And he might have been that he was just younger. Have situations where, you have two brothers and one of them is named John and the other brother is older and he has a son. He names him John. He becomes Little John and the other one Big John. So is that what happened here? We don't know. But this James, the son of Alphaeus, and James the Lesser, we don't know exactly, why that's the case. Of all those disciples, Thaddeus is the most confusing. Thaddeus, they're known by, several of them are known by, it's like Nathaniel and Bartholomew, James the Lesser, and James, son of Alphaeus. But this one, he's he's in Matthew and Mark. He's called Thaddeus. But in King James, that's it's his name is translated Labius. And in fact, there's Thaddeus who is called Labius. And then Luke calls him Judas. But he doesn't make sure, he said, don't confuse him with Judas Iscariot. Judas, the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became the traitor. So that it's listed that way. John says, then Judas, not Judas Iscariot, said, Lord, why do you intend to show yourself to us and not to the world? And that's John 14:22. So there's these two that are called Judas, and they believe that he is actually Thaddeus. Is that absolutely the case, and we have absolute proof of it? No. But part of it is that when you get the list of names, it always starts with Peter. And it's Peter, James, and John. And then it starts again with, and so when it comes down to where Thaddeus is in John's, there you have Judas. So they believe that was his name some way also. And it could, well, it could have been. It's possible that they were. It's there. I think that there's a place where Thaddeus is also called the son of Alphaeus, and so you have three that are called the son of Alphaeus, and that's where that comes from. So but Thaddeus is the most confusing to keep, and we don't know. Again, he's one of those that once Jesus is crucified and the book of Acts start, you never hear about him. We don't, he's listed in that first chapter as one of the 10, and they add, or one of the 11, and they add Matthias as the 12th apostle, but you never hear of him again. We don't know what he did as far as the Bible's concerned. Now I'm going to kind of talk next week about what the world says, what history says these 12 men did after Christ was crucified. And so we'll talk about that. I'll talk about one more and then we'll be done. Simon the Zealot. I think we talked about him just a little bit. That word zealot, there's two possible reasons people say that this could be his name, Simon the Zealot. The first one being that he was part of the sect that was called Zealots, and they believed they were like rebels. They were trying to free the country from the Romans. They were rebels, and they were out fighting, and that he had been part of that. Some other people also believe that he was a very zealous man, that when he got with Jesus, he was just on fire, and so very zealous, and that maybe that's why he was called Simon the Zealot. So we really don't know as far as that's concerned, but again, he's one of those that we really don't know anything about, and other than that, as far as the Bible's concerned. So I'm going to talk about in some detail the other disciple, Mr. Judas Iscariot. Why is his name Iscariot? It is Iscariot of Kerioth. It's the name of the town. He was Judas of Kerioth. That's where he was, and it's a reference to where he lived and was born and raised, and so that's why it's called that, Judas of Kerioth. So, but we'll talk in sort of some detail about him next week. Anybody have any discussion or questions or anything you want to bring up? I'm hoping this is something that will help us as we go on through, because as we study the life of Jesus and we come up and we're talking about some of these people, it'll be helpful to know something about them and know the stories a little bit. If there's nothing, I will ask you to stand to your feet. Appreciate you being here. Anybody have a word of testimony, a word of praise, any word before we dismiss? All right. Appreciate you being here. April, will you dismiss us, please?